Welcome. It's Friday Eve. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Don Lemon Show. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm going to put this down a little bit. There we go. So I don't have so much headroom. Thank you for joining Lemon Live at 5. Great that you're here. We have a lot to discuss. I hope you're feeling better because I know some of you are really upset. You were sort of down in the dumps, and I'm telling you it's going to be okay. A lot of work to do for folks who are supporting the Vice President. Kamala Harris. Okay, a lot of work to do, but that does not mean it is impossible. I think that the work can be done, and you can get it back on track. But to be honest with you, I'm always going to be honest with you. It's going to be 4 years of chaos, 4 years of calling people names, 4 years of demonizing immigrants and minorities and members of the underserved community. But we did a bit of it this morning on our Hot Topic show at 10 a.m. And I'm going to do some of it now. I'm going to have a real postmortem, and I have a perfect person to discuss it with. But stand by before I introduce that person. We're going to talk about a postmortem meaning what went wrong, what happened, what could have been improved. I don't know if is there a blame to go around. And I'm going to give you a caveat here. Under the circumstances, I believe that Kamala Harris ran herself personally a really good campaign. I'm not so sure. And again, I'm not just talking shit about people to talk shit about them. And you can take my advice if you want with a grain of salt or whatever it is however it is that you choose to do it. But I do not believe that she was served well by some members of her team and her campaign. And I will tell you why as we go through the aftermath here. The finger pointing has begun in the aftermath of a devastating loss for the Vice President Kamala Harris. Democrats all across this country have started to discuss how and why things went so wrong. Democrats are starting to speak out about some of the issues that people have been complaining about for a long time that they didn't take seriously, that they did not know would penetrate, right? Pronouns and such. The belief that they're over-indexing on, quite frankly, as a member of the LGBTQ community, but over-indexing on issues that have to do with trans people, okay? Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you this, all right? Who's to blame? Folks have no shortage of answers from President Biden. They're saying he stayed too long. To campaign officials like Jen O'Malley Dillon and Mike Donlin, who are part of the old Biden team. Maybe she should have gotten a new team, but that's what folks are saying. To figures in the media, all right? Today, I want to discuss what could have been done differently and what Democrats now have to do going forward now that we are here. So joining me now, Ravi Gupta, the host of Majority 54 and Lost Debate podcasts. He also held a host of roles with Barack Obama's first campaign and first term, including assistant to David Axelrod. Ravi, welcome. How you doing? What'd you think of my introduction? What's going on in your world?
I think it was spot on. And yeah, my world is like probably your world, getting a lot of calls from people from all over the spectrum. I went through my list today. I've been critical of a lot of things that have happened, but really out of love, trying to be as good as we possibly could be. And I woke up today and I made myself a call list of people who worked on the campaign, and I called one person at a time and just thanked them for their hard work and said, like, look, I know this is going to be a conversation about what we could do differently, but you were out there doing the thing, and I appreciate it, and I don't want to take away from that. And there were some good conversations out there. Like, people are bummed, but so many of the people I talk to are ready to get, peel themselves off the floor and get working.
Do they have an idea of what went wrong?
Well, there are a few.
It's too early for them.
It depends on who you're talking to. Like, just this afternoon, I was talking to somebody who was intricately involved with the debate prep, and my point to her was like, you actually did everything right. The debate prep was actually the best part of the campaign. Mm-hmm. I thought the debate was amazing. I talked to somebody who was on the field side of things, and he was in Philly, and he was like, look, it's really demoralizing to know that nothing we could have done would have made a difference. Even if we won Pennsylvania, it wouldn't have made a difference. And I said to him, look, like you do field because you assume it's going to be a 1-point race or fewer. And then in this case, it wasn't a 1-point race. There wasn't anything you could do, but I'm not hearing a lot of grumblings that the field campaign was bad. What was really worthy of some scrutiny was the messaging and the use of candidate time. And then there's tons of deep issues with the party and, the way that we as liberals talk about things generally that is worth consideration that go well beyond, as you said, Kamala Harris.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So listen, I've been on the phone today and people have been calling me to discuss even magazine writers and stuff like, hey, should she have done this? Should she have not done that? And I have some, I'm very opinionated and I have my point of view. And again, I don't want to beat up on, especially Kamala Harris. I don't want to beat up on the campaign folks, but they put themselves in that position because it was their job to help get her elected. Am I right?
Correct.
Okay. So let me just give you, I just want to read this. Number one. How do I say that? I'll just say, when Biden dropped out, why did she keep her team? What she kept, and maybe it was because it was so quick that she felt that she had to keep Jen O'Malley Dillon, that she felt that she had to keep Quentin Folks. I don't really know Quentin that well. I don't know Michael that well, though I've communicated with him. But they're not the easiest people to communicate with. And I know that they're very busy. And, you know, for me to communicate with them was a do no harm event. And I've been doing this for a long time. I was out there talking to people. They did not seem to be too interested in folks like me, folks like Brian Tyler Cohen, folks like David Pakman, people who are in these spaces that are dominated by these sort of right-wing bros who are injecting this right-wing sort of propaganda into the minds of young people, especially young white men and just young people in general. They were not so interested in us. They didn't want to grant us interviews, right? When we are a do no harm interview platform where she would have been reaching the minds of young people and different people who are watching, the few people, to be honest, that's watching traditional news, especially cable news. Why did she keep them? And why were they running her campaign like it was Hillary Clinton in 2016?
Well, I think I don't know those two people personally, but I think as a general principle, anybody involved in the Biden effort at the senior level, obviously you can't fire every field organizer. That would have been unreasonable. But anybody at the senior levels in and around the Biden campaign, and certainly within his inner circle, in my opinion, should have had to justify their existence. And the assumption should have been that they would be replaced. Not because I have anything personally against any of them, but because
Exactly.
I think that whole operation around him was really screwed up. And like I said, there are certain people who should have been kept, like the person running debate prep, I think is excellent. And actually,
agree 100%.
Yeah. And she, you know, but there are very few people at the senior levels who should have been around. And on your point about podcasts, right? And I think the Rogan podcast is a microcosm of this. I think there was this sense they broke too late in getting her out there. Like there was too long of a period of time in which she wasn't out there off the cuff. And I think too many stage rallies with the same speech over and over and over again. They were running this campaign like it was 2008. Things have changed. And I think in foregoing places like Rogan, places like this, right? Friendly or not friendly, just get out there, speak to as many people as possible, speak to the converted, speak to the soon to be converted, speak to hostile audiences. Like just get out there and show people that you're willing to just meet people where they are. And I think that's one of there's many things that I would do differently about this campaign. That's one of them.
Why were they so careful? That's what I don't understand, especially considering who they were running against. A couple of things, who they were running against and the unusual circumstances around how she became the nominee in the first place should have been, in my estimation, fuel. And I say it should have been evidence to them that they should just take the brakes off. She had 114 days. Take the brakes off and go. I have interviewed Kamala Harris a number of times, right? As a senator and as a presidential candidate, and as I believe as vice president as well. She's formidable when I did town halls with her at CNN. And when she wanted to jump in and get a point across, you knew. I was like, and I would just go, whoa, okay, all right. Wow, there is the prosecutor coming out. And I respected that. Why not just let her out there and do that? What took them so long? Why were they so like treating her as if she was some Cupid doll or something?
The few moments that we had, call her daddy, Shay Shay, Charlemagne, they were all great. I thought she did great in all those appearances. More of that, please. Like, and it's a basic math question, right? Every rally you do, what are you going to get? 10,000, 20,000 people, and then the local news, but most networks aren't going to pick it up. And honestly, what good is another clip on MSNBC? You're speaking to the converted, right? So the question is,
wow,
the math, right?
You were listening to my phone calls today.
Yeah.
because it's a dwindling audience of 60-something-year-old people plus who are already going to vote for you, and you're not going to really change any mind. So you're preaching to the converted, right?
Well, she did the Brene Brown podcast, which, no offense to Brene, but like there's not a single person who listens to Brene Brown who isn't a Kamala Harris supporter. So it's like, go on, go where people are skeptical. And every one of these things you do is a mini rally, right? And some of them are way more than that. What does Rogan, 35 million or something watch the Trump clip, right? It's like, these are big, big audiences. And that is a much better use of your time than the same rally over and over and over again. And I remember watching on Monday night, I was watching the coverage of Harris, and I was watching her speech, and we were like 5-10 minutes into her speech, and both CNN and NBC were covering
I've heard this before.
and it was like, when we fight, we win. It's all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, the heck does this even mean? Like, if you're a swing voter, somebody who's not already sold, what does we fight, we win? What does that do for them? Like, how does that persuade them in any way? Right. That kind of sloganeering is like, it wouldn't have been good in 2008. It isn't good now. It certainly.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean about, especially considering what happened. Look, you and I know that it's different. The rules are different for minorities, right? And the rules are different for women. And I get that she's a Black woman, but because of just how short it is and who she was up against, they should not have been careful with her. They should have said, look, this is what you need to get across the economy, how you're going to differentiate yourself from, quite honestly, Joe Biden, who put you in this position. Yes. They should have had a come to Jesus and said, listen, Joe, Mr. President, I love you. You put me in this position to be the vice president and to possibly become the president of the United States. But as you know, I'm running a campaign. And so there are going to be times when reporters are going to ask me questions and I'm going to have to differentiate myself from you. I'm going to have to say that I would have done some things differently from you. And I hope you understand that. And I mean it in the most respectful way. She didn't do that. When let me see, do I have the soundbite of this? When she went on The View, I don't know if I have it, but do you remember she went on The View? And my friend Sonny, who actually I spoke to today, said, is there anything that you would do different than Joe Biden? And she said, nothing comes to mind.
It's the worst answer in the entire campaign.
I was like, and Sonny is a friend. Sonny likes her, right? And I'm sure Sonny asked that question. Obviously, Sonny's a journalist, but thinking, well, she's got this. And then she gave her a grace and she said, nothing you can think of? And she's like, no, I can't. And it's like, oh.
Yeah.
So her loyalty, which is commendable, but
it's admirable, but not effective. That's what it is.
Why didn't her team prepare her for that? Is it because it's Joe Biden's old team? Was that the reason? And she felt like, I can't.
I'm going to venture a guess on what happened at The View. I think if she had gotten that exact same question on the debate stage, she would have answered it well. I think she was probably a little bit like, oh, The View is a friendly audience, and was a little bit less sharp on that interview than she would have otherwise been. It's hard for me to imagine that she wouldn't have been prepped at all at any point for answering that question. But the thing is, we're all left wondering. All we know is what came out of her mouth, which was inexplicably bad. Did
you know when you heard it immediately?
Yeah, I wasn't watching The View, but I saw it. Somebody sent me the clip right away, and I was like, this is really bad. Like, this is going to be in ads, and I can't blame Republicans for putting it in ads. It's the number one question that people have for her is how she's going to be different than Joe Biden.
And she didn't say, I wouldn't do anything. She goes, nothing comes to mind, which gave her a little bit of an out, I think, because she didn't actually say, I wouldn't do anything. She goes, nothing comes to mind. But yeah, But it also said,
nothing comes to mind. It almost seems like you hadn't thought about it. I'm like, what? So yes, and I don't want to, beat up on her too much, because again, I share your general feeling about Kamala Harris and the valiant effort she put together.
Great.
But I think everything going back, I think there were mistakes along the way with the interplay of Biden and Harris that plagued her and him every step of the way. When he first picked her, instead of saying, hey, I'm picking her because she'd be the best vice president, he set up the choice ahead of time by saying, I want to pick a Black woman, which means that everybody thought when they picked her that's why she was elected. And then obviously he dragged his feet all along the way to get out of the race. And I think was campaigning the entire time for re-election, which means that there were certain things that he didn't do really well, like sell the economy, take action earlier on immigration. There are certain things that he just didn't do because in part he was running for re-election. And then obviously he dragged his feet in getting out of the way, deprived her and everybody else of a primary, which means that she had real legitimacy grounds. There's a lot of people just looking at it being like, she was hand selected, this is undemocratic or whatever. And I was pushing back against that at the time, but I wanted a primary too. Like I generally was undecided about who the next pick should be, and I imagine most Democratic voters were too, but we never got that because Biden waited too long. And then, like you said, we got the same people were in charge of the campaign, which there should be some accountability there.
So I'm going to play this because so people can see it, and as we're looking back again, we're not beating up on Kamala Harris. This is called a postmortem. Okay,
yeah, out of respect.
It's out of respect. This is The View. Watch.
You have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact. Yeah. The work that we have done, for example, capping the cost of insulin at $35 a month for our seniors is something I care deeply about allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Yes. And bring the cost of prescription medication down for seniors, but my intention is to expand that for all Americans. Mm-hmm. The work we have done to
so we get
industries,
you get the
whether
gist
it be.
Of it. So here's the point of it. Even if just that first part, that nothing that comes to mind, it didn't seem very harmful in the moment, right? But I think they knew on The View. But I think it would be, when it would have been at the beginning, as she had said, of course, I'm not Joe Biden. I'm going to do a lot of things differently than Joe Biden. But the things that are important to me and that I'm going for now are these things. Would that have made a difference?
I do think that would have been a much better answer, right? Or look, I am a loyal vice president and I have a job, but my job is not president. My job is to follow the agenda of the president and be ready to step in, God forbid, if anything should happen. That's my job, and to be the tie-breaking vote in the Senate. But as president, I'd be the one calling the shots. I'd be setting the direction. And here are 3 things that haven't happened yet that I'm going to do as president. And then obviously remind people of your age and your generation, right? Like there's a different approach.
Here's the thing. The reason why I said I don't want to beat up on Kamala Harris is because if someone had put me in that role and I would say, well, these guys, Jen O'Malley, Dillon, blah, 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 this person, that person, they are already working on this campaign. They have experience. They're going to guide me. And so I would probably I would want to listen to them because I have been thrust in this position. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Totally. My problem with Dillon in particular was the way she comported herself around the entire conversation of Biden dropping out. I just think she tainted herself. Like the comments she was making, the way she was making the comments, what to me seemed like a really sloppy, disorganized way of thinking about things, and also a misplaced sense of loyalty. Yeah. To me, it's like an honesty test. And one of the reasons why I don't like MAGA and Trump, one of the many reasons, is they're dishonest fundamentally. And I think anybody who was in and around the effort to cover up for Joe Biden's condition, I think needed to do the honorable thing and step aside. We can all understand why people do it, right? You're there. We've all watched The West Wing. Everybody wants to, do the best they can out of a sense of real kindness and reverence for Biden, and they want to be loyal members of the team. But ultimately, we're Americans first, and that was an indefensible effort, in my opinion. What they did,
How would you have answer the question? I think it was the sort of, when did you know about Joe Biden and blah 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 blah.
Well, I was saying publicly before the primary that he shouldn't run again, and all throughout the course of the primary, I was playing clips on my podcast and saying this guy doesn't sound good. People hated me for it. I'm on the Midas Network, which is a very, it was a very loyal audience to Biden, and I love those guys over at Midas. But the audience didn't like it when I was talking like that. And on my own podcast,
Let me just tell you this.
Yeah.
On this very program, there were some loyal Biden folks on here. There are loyal Kamala Harris folks. I guarantee you, if I go into comments now, they're going to be like, shut the hell up, Don and Robbie. What's wrong? Why are you doing this? And so when I said, Joe Biden, this is what's happening with the Democratic Party. Joe Biden, they're pushing him to step out. They believe that he does. And it's going to probably be Kamala Harris. Does she stand a chance of winning? I got crucified on my own platform. So I know what you were saying. And I would say that was a bad answer. Like the night that Tim Walz gave the answer about, what happened to him in China, right? During the Tiananmen Square, and why, and he didn't have an answer for it. And I said, that was bad. I got dragged for it.
Well, the lesson of all of this is speaking truth is really important. you know, and I think this gets to the point about traditional media. Like one of the things that was really baffling to me as I watched the coverage on MSNBC and CNN the night before the election was these panels were filled with people who I personally have like respect for: Bakari Sellers, Melanie John Fast, all these people who were part of the cover up. And I'm like, that's not cool. You know, like I was on MSNBC on Morning Joe the week of the debate, after the debate. And I was on this panel and Chris Matthews went before me and he said something like, and everybody was saying the same thing, by the way. This is after the debate. They're all saying, we owe it to Joe Biden. And these are the exact words of Chris Matthews. We owe it to Joe Biden to give him more time. And I'm like, it was like the summer. I'm like, we owe it to Joe Biden. Like he's a public servant. We don't owe him anything. Like this is about who could be the best president and the best nominee in that order. And he fails that test. He can't utter a complete sentence, you know? And there was no accountability for those people whatsoever. Still hasn't been.
You said that, huh?
Yeah. Well, I stepped in and I said, if this guy doesn't step out, it is going to be a disaster. We have to own it for what it is. And it was one of those awkward moments where Joe Scarborough was like, well, we're going to go to commercial. And that was it. Never to be seen again. And it's like, this is my problem with the party right now, which is the lack of accountability. I was a school principal down south. I ran a network of charter schools, and we were all about accountability, right? And we always viewed it as a privilege to do the work that we did. And if we didn't get results, the whole like bargain with charters is if you're not getting results, we shut you down, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how I feel the Democratic Party should be run, which is if you don't do a good job, no hard feelings, but you shouldn't be doing that job anymore. Yeah. And I worry that there's just been such a lack of accountability that we'll be right back where we are if we don't start clearing house around here.
It says, I just want to read this, right, just to get it across. She kept Biden campaign chair Jen O'Malley, which is Jen O'Malley Dillon, other campaign leaders like Quentin Folks and Michael Tyler. Harris had worked with Biden's campaign manager, Julie Chavez Rodriguez, in the past, but didn't have a track record with the others. While Harris had her own team members who merged in, there was a disconnect between the team Biden built, Ravi, and the new candidate they were working with, said Chris Scott, the vice president's director of coalitions. The campaign, as it was built for a different kind of nominee, said Scott, who worked on the vice president's campaign team before she became the nominee in July.
Well, add one more name to that, Anita Dunn, right? Senior advisor to Biden, who was incredibly awful every step of the way, was castigating anybody who wanted to criticize Biden, gave an exit speech at the White House where she referenced The Godfather going after their enemies. Where did she wind up? As a senior advisor to the largest political action committee. So not only was the campaign itself populated by these people, but she had a nice little exit with a very important role, spending the tons of money on the ads that didn't move the needle here. Yeah. Right. A bunch of ads that were baffling, like a lot of these ads. And so I'm like, we got to learn from this. Like, we don't owe it to any of these people to give them jobs. Like, this is not a jobs program. Like, this is about winning.
Okay. I'm glad you are saying this. Good. And I'm sure I'm going to tick a lot of people off and this will get picked up or whatever, but it is what it is. And it's true. Harris tried to change to be the change candidate, but she didn't distance herself from Biden, which we talked about the view. There's nothing that comes to mind, she said, but it wasn't enough. She was running as a change candidate. Voters consistently had concerns over Biden's handling of the economy, immigration, Israel's war in Gaza, and I can tell you how I think she could have differentiated herself with that.
I want to hear that. Yeah, because I'm
Harris
curious.
Struggled to create a new narrative that put distance between her and the president's agenda. So we'll get that. Hold on to that. So here's what the thing is. This is what I want to get to. Exit polls from the race show that Harris wasn't able to revive the Obama coalition of voters, which was surprising to me, that helped propel the former president to the White House. Turnout from key groups like Black voters and young voters was disappointing. And Trump made inroads with Latino and Asian voters. Adrian Shropshire, who's the executive director of Black PAC, said outreach to Black voters in this election cycle was significantly delayed well before Harris became the nominee. She said fundraising and resources coming into independent organizations like hers in this cycle didn't come until this summer, and it led to several months of not connecting with Black communities. This is my biggest gripe, if you will, with this campaign, okay? Robbie, they ran her campaign as if she was a white woman trying to appeal to black voters.
Yeah.
And she is a black woman who knows the black community, who is comfortable with black people, who, if not everybody can walk into a black Baptist church in Georgia and feel right at home and know all the hymns and prayers. Not everybody can go and hang out with folks in Harlem or whatever. She's a black woman. She went to an HBCU. She knows black culture. Why were they hiding her from her own people? And why were they treating black media if it's some sort of niche specialty that we will get to when we will get to? She should be, I'm going to be honest, she should be dropping in on the Don Lemon show right now as we're on now discussing the campaign. It should be like, whoa, we got a special guest.
Yeah.
Vice President, how are you? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. Don, I only have a few minutes. I just want to say such and such and such and such. Ask her a few questions and boom, move on to the next podcaster or streamer. Hey, I'm going to call Joy Reid tonight on MSNBC. Joy, hey, it's the Vice President. Hi, Vice President. I've been wanting to ask you about this women's issue, but she has an answer for that. She goes in to do that. She should be dropping in on Tamron Hall show. We have the Vice President. I got to spend this morning with the Vice President on a Zoom call, and we talked about some things as we had coffee.
Yeah, the few times she did it, she was good. Charlamagne's a good example.
Oh yeah, but this is let me play. This is a Charlamagne thing, and they were asking a question that I had been asking since the summer, and the mainstream corporate media did not get around to it for 2 months. Okay, and then finally they had no other option but to address it, and this is how they addressed it. And she had a fine answer, but they would not even want to acknowledge that this was part of the problem with her constituency. Here it is.
Don Lemon has stated that there's a large group of black men who believe Donald Trump sent them a personal check during COVID because his name was on it versus it coming from the government as a stimulus check. Can you provide some clarification on this?
Speak to the stimmy.
I'm so glad you raised that. Mm-hmm. So here's what happened. A majority Democratic Congress fought to get those stimulus checks out, fought against resistance by the Trump administration, and won because we had a majority of Democrats in Congress. And that's why those checks went out. As we all know and grew up learning, Congress holds the purse strings. It was Congress that made that decision. And then Donald Trump, never being one to pass up an opportunity to give himself credit when no credit is due, put his name on those checks. And sadly, it resulted in people thinking Donald Trump was responsible for and directly responsible for putting money in their pocket, when in fact, it was a Democratic majority Congress that was responsible for those checks going out.
That's a great answer. Yeah.
But they did not. They were afraid for her to give that answer. I was looking for my text and somehow I don't see it. That perhaps it has disappeared.
Well, okay, let me make a bigger point.
And I said, you have a problem with black men. You need to address this as soon as possible. The biggest audience she's going to have is during the debate. And that would be one of the things that I would make sure that she would get out in the moments with the biggest audience so that she could nip this in the bud. Didn't respond, nothing. Go on, sorry.
Well, this gets to a larger point, and I think the most controversial recommendation I have coming out of this is, I used to work for David Axelrod, who I love and I think is really smart about this stuff. But one piece of advice that he's been pushing that I think is antiquated is that you can't educate the electorate. He says that all the time. Like it's basically a corollary of if you're explaining or losing. And he meant that in the case of the economy. And I think what is really like troubling to me is that you have this right-wing ecosphere and like really coordinated media effort that is very, very powerful that has been pushing a narrative about the economy, right? And the traditional media went along with it for too long. Like obviously the economy was not good for a while, but then when it started getting much, much better, the traditional media and the right-wing media were saying the same thing, which was basically validating quote unquote feelings, but the feelings were there because the media tells people what's going on, right? And there wasn't a lot of coverage of, well, the US actually has a better economic recovery than any other developed country. Unemployment's at record lows, crime is at record lows, inflation is getting under control. And there was like no real effort to educate the electorate about what was going on from almost any corner of the Democratic universe, and until very, very, very late, it eventually started to happen, but it was too late. Meanwhile, you had the right wing just lying to electorate. So it's like, yeah, like I understand why you say you can't educate the electorate, and if you're explaining you're losing, but if your opponents are straight up lying to the electorate about what's going on, you have to make that a priority. And it's not like we don't live in the world that we used to, where it's just like a couple cable stations and the traditional news, and then there are local newspapers who are going to give people context. There is a coordinated, aggressive, powerful right-wing media that is going to lie to people. And if we're not coordinated, aggressive, counter narrative against them, then we're going to continue to lose elections, because they're just going to paint a reality out there every time that fits whatever their need is. Next time it's going to be a bad economy under Trump. When JD Vance is running, the media is going to say the economy's good, and then we're going to, and then we're going to be right back in the same position.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you have to fact check people in real time. And I think you're right. Look, I was not with the President Joe Biden. I think the time that I realized that he was really, really slowing down was during the Juneteenth celebration at the White House, when I saw him, and not up close. And I was like, not the same Joe Biden that I interviewed, more than 3 or so years ago when he was on the campaign trail. So I sort of knew that, but the folks around him, I thought like, hey, look, he's an older guy. I can't keep a train of thought sometimes. I have to search for words. I'm sure he's surrounded himself with smart people. I think he's okay. But look, since I've known Joe Biden, meaning been on the scene, it was like I always would worry about him, even during Barack Obama when he served as his vice president.
Yeah, every time he talks, it's like,
oh shit,
don't say,
oh my god, it's not a Joe Biden mouth. So to me, it was like, no, okay, oh shit, what's going to come out of his mouth every single time? Yeah. Okay, go on.
What do you think should happen moving forward in terms of so much of like there's going to be the midterm elections. That's going to be a huge symbolic battleground over the direction of the party. And I have all kinds of theories of the messages candidates should have. I'm curious as to what you think should happen there, but also who the next nominee should be.
Well, I think they should, who I think the next nominee should be. Well, I tell you who I think it's going to be if they play their cards right. And if the Democrats are really smart about it, they need to get Wes Moore on board, and they need to
love Wes.
Yeah. They need to start, building a runway for him, and he's on the bench. They need to take him off the bench and get him out there, because I think he and his wife, who is just lovely, he's drop dead handsome. She's drop dead gorgeous. Not only are they a good looking, beautiful couple, they're the smartest people you ever want to meet. My
mom loves him. She passes the mom test. My mom in Staten Island is like, he's so handsome, that Wes Moore. That's a good sign.
She said the same thing about me, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I'll send her the clip. She'll be happy to see it. She's a big fan.
But they're philanthropic. He was head of the Robin Hood Foundation. Like they're just tied in. They're a great couple. I love both of them, and I think they would be one day a great president and first lady. And so I think that would be a great nominee. I don't know. I do like Pete Buttigieg. Right.
Yeah, me too.
Remember the LGBTQ community. I don't know if the country is ready for that. I wish that they were. But considering what is happening now with the MAGA folks and how conservative our country has become, I just don't know if that time is near or not. One day it will happen. I just don't know if it will happen in time for Pete Buttigieg. Do you understand what I'm saying?
He is the best messenger the party has, hands down.
And that's a skill to that, but that doesn't mean that you can be president.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure he would be a great president. I mean, actually running and winning, that's a whole different thing. So.
Yeah, I would be willing to give him a shot, but after this, I'm willing. I'm like, I could get why people are skittish about how the electorate would treat somebody like that. I have a very quick Pete story, which is I know him decently well, and his team invited me back when he was running for the primary. I remember he's having the issue with black voters, and there was the whole South Bend controversy around policing in South Bend, et cetera.
Well, he still does, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah, and this is why I think he'll continue to inch forward on this one. Obviously, there's no home run. There's no like Hail Mary pass on this, but his team invited me to a meeting of all black leaders in New York City. It was like a round table off the record during the height of this controversy. And he sat in the room, and a guy sat across from him and said to him, this is how the meeting started. They said, I represent a bunch of people who are never going to vote for a gay person. Tell me why we should why we should in any way think you're a viable candidate. And he just took one question after another like this. And at the end of this meeting, he had these people eating from the palm of his hands. I've never seen anything like it. And I think it's people who are watching him go to Fox News and go to these other places. Like whatever he does, I think he needs a central role, like in this party. Like
I would love for him to be president one day. I'm just saying, in the current climate, when even the Democrats are saying we over-index, some are saying, not all of them, on LGBTQ issues or trans issues or pronouns. I just wonder if that environment is going to change enough in 4 years or 8 years or whenever it is that he may be ready to run for president. Perhaps it will. I'm just saying right now, I don't know if it's time. That's it. And I'm a member of the LGBTQ community.
Speaking of, a great leader who himself admits he will never be president because he's a little frumpy is Jared Polis in Colorado. But I think his messaging needs to be used. I think like what he has done, like I think one of the problems that the Democrats have is a local branding problem where most people who even support Democrats in places like New York, they associate the Democrats with higher taxes, more regulation, and in many cases, like a little bit of like the mixture of cancel culture, identity politics. So I think we've been getting.
Okay, so you sandwich it there. I think that the higher taxes is wrong. I think the regulations are right, and I think the cancel culture is, that has some merit to it. But not. I mean, Trump's taxes are much worse. People complain about taxes now, and I'm like, these are Trump taxes. They don't expire until 2025, and they're not going to expire.
Yeah, to be clear, like I think it's more of a local branding problem. I think the Democrats nationally have been fine on taxes, but I think part of the problem is like we haven't been putting forth. If you look at leadership in places like San Francisco or Chicago or our mayor here in New York, it's like we've had such mismanagement. Like think about the San Francisco school board, for example, who just dragged their feet to get the schools open, and there was a recall of Chesa there. It's just like we had like some really bad governance for a period of time. Mm-hmm. And so what I would love to see now is like a bunch of Democratic leaders who just are hyper competent. We're going to improve government. We're going to do fewer things, but we're going to do them really, really well. And we're going to have a freedom agenda that includes making it easier to start a business, putting more money in your pocket, while at the same time improving services. And that's what Jared has done really well in Colorado, is he's actually managed to lower taxes while improving government services, which is why Colorado is one of the few states, from what I understand, where Harris and Democrats generally did better than they have in the past. I think because the brand there is really good.
Okay, let's go through some things, and I just want to run some sound bites, and I will get your response. And I just want you, if you will, do you mind taking questions from some of the?
Absolutely, yeah,
okay. So I just want to go through some things and to just get quick reactions because we prepared some things for you. I saw a Trump win as a possibility, but I do believe that the Madison Square Garden changed things. I think she would have lost by more had it not been for the Puerto Rican at the Madison Square Garden thing, right? So I think that was sticky. 100%. I know it was. I was out there talking to people about it. So yesterday I woke up and I wasn't like, when it was happening, I wasn't stunned. I was disappointed. I'm not sad. I'm just disappointed that the country went that way. I predicted Trump would win in 2016, that he would lose in 2020. But I thought like, okay, I believe that women are going to come out. And that was sort of the unknown factor. And it didn't happen, but I could see it coming. Stephen A. Smith, by the way, a week before, not even the day that the Puerto Rican thing happened, my team members and I were like, oh, he's going to win. He's going to win. And then all of a sudden that happened, we're like, oh, maybe this is a game changer. Okay. All right. So this is Stephen A. Smith saying something very similar on The View, why he saw a Trump win coming. Here it is.
Surprised at how lopsided it was. I was not surprised by the outcome. Mm-hmm. Right. I saw the outcome coming from a mile away. You have to take into account, listen, we respect our president, Joe Biden, but here's the reality. He got into office. He promised to be a transitional president, to be a stopgap to pave the way for somebody else to come on board. Into the midterms, it was supposed to be a red wave. It did not happen. The Democrats was flying high. He felt the momentum because he was the incumbent. And instead of leaving, he decided to stay. Yeah. When he decided to stay, the Democrats were in a quandary because they were expecting him to leave. Now he wants to stay. They're around him. They're seeing the fastball has dissipated to some degree. They're seeing that he's not what he used to be. And what do you do about it? You grease the skids. There's no primary for him to experience. You let him go on stage June 27th, and clearly he was exposed. 3.5 weeks later, he's forced and compelled to step away because donors to the Democratic establishment, they were
Okay,
not going to support
that's good. We get the
And then
point.
Kamala Harris is inserted.
I hadn't seen that
I don't
particular
blame
thing.
her one-
That's no real breaking news. I mean, don't you think that? I mean, that's not a real breaking news. That Joe Biden was supposed to be a transitional figure, a transformational figure, and then leave. So, what do you say about that?
Just as a point of style, Stephen A. Smith we're so good at this. Like, he's just he's really good at just putting together a take. Like, he's such a master of the craft. Like, even when it's not sports, I'm like, there's not, like you're saying, there's nothing he's saying that's profound, but he's just so damn good at saying it. I'm like, man, this.
Yeah, it's look. Let me tell you. Yeah.
He's incredible.
Another Stephen A. Smith on the Latino vote. Let's see if there's something that's groundbreaking in this, but here it is.
55% of Latino men voted for Trump. Why do you think that happened?
Well, I think that economically, they were looking at things. First of all, you've got, in this country, you've got Cubans, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Guatemalans, Venezuelans, Colombians, et cetera, et cetera. And if you talk to the Hispanic community, depending on who you're talking to, they think differently. The Cubans think differently than the Dominicans. The Dominicans think different than Colombians. To some, the economy was a priority. To some, believe it or not, it was the border. You had some folks within the Hispanic populace that were encouraging the borders to be closed.
They want to pull the.
But here's why that's so imperative. It's so important, because we're not Latinos. They're telling you that's what we want. Yeah. We had to stay online. We had to be online in order to get in. Who are you to bypass the line? And one of my friends, I remember he used this analogy, and I never forget this as long as I live. He said, you like Six Flags, you go to Great Adventures? I said, I have. He said, sure. Disney World? Sure, I have. Of course I have. He said, so you stand in line, Take about 2 hours to get on some of these rides because they're that popular. He said, and right before it's time for you to get on that line, somebody jumped in front of you. What you gonna do? And he said that kind of mentality is how you have folks within the Latino, within the Hispanic community. Okay. Some of them, not all, but some of them.
Because I'm not no disrespect to Stephen A. There's a lot I want to get to, because you and I like spend a lot of time just sort of, ad-libbing here, as they say, or shooting the shit. There's a point to that. That's not the biggest point, though, because people cut in line all the time. And just because someone comes in illegally doesn't mean that they're going to cut in front of you, right? It means that they're here. They're not going to get the same services as you because you're to become a citizen, and on and on. The real thing is that it's competition, is what it is. It is that the folks who come in illegally and who have not been here longer are going to charge less for their services to do certain jobs and works. And the other folks have already set a bar for themselves that they're not going to work for anything less than this. And the migrants are undercutting them. It's competition.
Absolutely. I saw this. I did a little narrative series about the migrant crisis in Staten Island. And what I learned was a lot of the handymen and carpenters were hiring the newly arrived migrants because they were charging less.
There you go. That's it. That's what it is.
Yes. But the biggest point he made, like the most important thing he said, whether profound or not, is that Latinos are like anybody else. They're complicated. They have businesses, their parents, and some of them like more immigrants. Some of them don't. But I think one of the biggest mistakes Democrats have made, and I've been saying this for a long time, and you probably know Carlos Corbella, a good friend of mine, has been saying this for a long time. They assume that all Latinos, or Latinx, as Democrats were saying for a while, which Latinos didn't even want to be called, they cared about immigration, and they only thought about immigration the way Democrats think about immigration, or the way that the elite Democrats do. That certainly is not true. Like, it's just not how they think. And there's no they. It's like, people are Americans. They live in communities. They think differently. They need to be.
But the Cubans are historically conservative, and they support Republicans, and they have a different thing. The Cubans, like, honestly, they feel like they're white, right? That's what they say. That's what my Latino friends say. Cubans think they're white. They have a wet foot, dry foot policy. When they come, they get to stay. That doesn't necessarily happen with other groups, right? So once you touch American soil, then you're American. Or if you're, if you come over. Remember, folks would come over on rafts and all of that stuff, Cuba and whatever. So it's that sort of thing. But also, Puerto Ricans are seen as immigrants, but they're not. They're American citizens, and people think that because they speak Spanish, that somehow, and they feel sometimes they do as if they're immigrants because they speak Spanish. And sometimes people see and hear them as the other. And so he's right about different, groups. And also Latino folks or Hispanic people or my Mexican friends or whatever, they want to be called Mexican and they want to be called, by the way, Venezuelans.
Yeah, that was a funny little moment
I was like,
there.
I don't know how I was pronouncing that.
Venezuelans.
I don't know what it was, but Venezuelans, they want to be called that. Just like, you know, some people want to be called African American. Some people want to be called Black, right? It's not just everybody's like one thing under the sun.
And some people don't even want to be associated with the race at all. Like,
yeah, but they didn't know Latinx. So like, nobody wants to be called Latinx. What the fuck is that?
But that is like one of the biggest lessons is like that whole world that got us defund the police and abolish ICE and Latinx. Like all those folks need to sit down. Like, you know, like it's just silly stuff.
I got in trouble because I said that defund the police was the dumbest slogan that I had ever heard. And they were like, how dare you? You're not Black. You're not a Democrat. I'm like, well, I am Black, but I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican either, but I know a dumb slogan when I see one. And if you want to say police reform, then I certainly understand that. Or you want to say, you know, no excessive force policy. Okay, great. But saying you want to defund the police, you're going to lose on that one. You are bringing up a very good point that Julie Roginski said on, I think it was MSNBC, it may have been CNN, about changes that Democrats need to make in their messaging here.
I'm going to speak some hard truths to my friends in the Democratic Party. This is not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Kamala Harris's fault. It's not Barack Obama's fault. It is the fault of the Democratic Party in not knowing how to communicate effectively to voters. We are not the party of common sense, which is what the message that voters sent to us. For a number of reasons. We don't know how to speak to voters. When we address Latino, and language, listen, language has meaning. When we address Latino voters as Latinx, for instance, because that's the politically correct thing to do, it makes them think that we don't even live on the same planet as they do. When we are too afraid to say that, hey, college kids, if you're trashing a campus at Columbia University because you're unhappy about some sort of policy and you're taking over a university, and you're trashing it and preventing other students from learning, that is unacceptable. But we're so worried about alienating one or another cohort in our coalition that we don't know what to say when normal people look at that and say, wait a second, I send my kids to college so they can learn, not so that they can burn buildings and trash lawns, right? And so on and so forth. When we put pronouns after names and say she, her, as opposed to saying, you know what, if I call you by the wrong pronoun,
exactly.
Call me out. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. But stop with the virtue signaling.
Right.
And just speak to people like they're normal. There's nothing I'm going to say to Michael that I'm not going to say to you, that I'm not going to say to somebody else. I speak the same language to everybody. But that's not what Democrats do. We constantly try to parse out different ways of speaking to different cohorts because our focus groups or our polling shows that so-and-so appeals to such and such. That's not how normal people think. It's not common sense. And we need to start being the party of common sense again. Joe Biden is not responsible for that. Neither is Kamala Harris. It is a problem that Democrats have had for years. I've been banging the drum on this for, I don't know how, probably 10 years, if not longer on this. We need to get back to being the party of common sense, that people look at us and say, we understand you. We appreciate what you say because you speak our language. And until we do that, we should stop blaming other people for our own mistakes.
Robbie?
Amen to that. I mean, put her in charge. I'd never heard of her before, but that was great. Well,
right.
Here's one caveat I would give to what she says. I agree with everything she's saying. I do think the Democrats have fixed a lot of these things over the past year or two, but it was a little late. And they were stuck with the branding of some poor periods of time. And Harris herself was, right? Like some of these ads, right? Like we're pulling up stuff that she was saying when she was like kind of bending to the forces that this strategist is describing. And I think we were stuck with the bill for a couple of years of just total nonsense within the party.
Yeah. I agree with her 100%. And I think sometimes, not sometimes, many times, Democrats feel like they can't say anything because they'll lose their Democratic card or their street cred with Democrats. I think women feel that they can't say certain things. And I have this from a very good friend who's in a high profile place and said, you know, Don, people can't take up for their friends, even if they say something wrong, because they're afraid of losing their feminist card, right? Even though we know sometimes when people will say things, maybe they're wrong in the moment, you know what I'm saying? But they're afraid to stand up because they don't want to be canceled as well. And there's too much of that coming from the Democratic Party. And every time the Democratic Party cancels a voice that is very crucial and critical to them, i.e. Al Franken, the Republicans laugh at them. You know, they'll talk shit about Al Franken, but they're so dumb. And if someone had done anything in the Republican Party that was even similar to what Al Franken would do, the Republicans would go, are you kidding me? It's locker room. It's bullshit. Get over it. We're moving on. And they get to keep that strong voice in their coalition. In the meantime, Democrats are virtue signaling, eating their own, and then casting that important person and voice with a very accomplished resume aside. It's sad and it's awful and it's just quite frankly dumb.
Yeah, my hope is that those days are past us. I definitely have seen I've seen some progress on it, and hopefully this election forces those who are not converted on this to be converted or cast aside, right? Like I did an interview with a Jewish insider that came out this morning. I'm not Jewish, but I love the people over there. And I was just talking about, they were asking me like, should we move left or center? I was like, is this even a question? Like, who's looking at this election and says we need to move more left? Like obviously there's certain populist economic policies that we consider or whatever, but like if you mean like any of the nonsense around like the virtue signaling you're talking about, the crazy slogans and all this kind of stuff, this is not even a question. And like we need to go full frontal into this midterm election saying that this is a battle between those people who believe in common sense and those people who believe in nonsense. And common sense has to emerge from this midterm election.
Well, let's hope it emerges. Hey, but before I move on, I want to give you some breaking news because the cabinet members are already starting to be picked. It had been speculated, Politico is reporting now, that Donald Trump picks Susie Wiles to be the chief of staff, Maggie Haberman of the New York Times as well. Trump in statement named Susie Wiles as chief of staff, story from Jonathan V. Swan, and also me coming. So what do you think of that? Shocking? Is that really breaking?
Not too shocking. I mean, we'll see how long she lasts. Like maybe, Don, we should make a bet here. Do you think she lasts a year? I don't.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, honestly, my producers and my team said, hey, Don, we need to start talking about who, you know, what members, cabinet members and blah, 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 who's going to be Donald Trump's team. And I said, can we really do that? Because, you know, he may decide that Susie Wiles is out before he even takes office. Do you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, how long will they last? It's like what's her name? What was her name in the lettuce? Marie, what was her name? And who would last longer, a head of lettuce or what's her name? What forget her name?
I always thought it would be the Scaramucci stuff. But yeah, my sense is I'm going to peg this at 9 months.
Theresa May that I'm thinking of? Yeah.
I think we're going to get 9 months of Susie Wiles.
You think so?
Yeah, that's my guess.
You guess so. All right. Anyway, that's the breaking. Here's Eric Swalwell on where we go from here.
Worried about political retribution from the former president, now soon to be the president again?
Yeah, I'm not. I expect that it'll likely come, and I'll protect my family and my staff, as any of us are who are threatened by the former president. But look, I'm all in, and I'm worried about the young woman right now in a state with a 6-week abortion ban who doesn't know what she's going to do to protect her body. I'm worried about the students who are going to go to class tomorrow and live in a mass shooter culture because they don't have a president who wants to address that issue. I'm worried about the Ukrainian people on the front lines right now who just saw America walk away from them. So if they can, get up every day and find a way to move forward, I can. That doesn't mean that, right now we shouldn't grieve and be upset, but we have to have a to-do list of what we're going to do to protect this country and not let Donald Trump turn the lights out on democracy.
Congressman, that was Eric Swalwell. What do you think? I think he's right. I mean, I think everybody's kind of saying the same message, right?
Yeah.
Cry now, get up.
I try not to even think about the Ukrainians, Don, honestly. It's like, it makes me ill.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to get that out. So we had Julie Rodzinski and we have Swalwell saying the same thing. And we also had the breaking news about Susie Wiles. Let's look at, this is a potential Trump cabinet officials right here. These are potential. So Susie Wiles, as you can see, first one, and chief of staff, and she has been named. And then Brooke Rollins was the other one. Now, yeah, Brooke Rollins could end up being the chief of staff before he even takes office. Treasury Secretary John Paulson or Scott Bessent, which is interesting to me because Scott Bessent is on my team, plays for my team, as they say.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So does Richard Grinnell, who could be Secretary of State, or Senator
Yeah,
Marco
remind me to
Rubio.
talk about Rich because I have some experience with Rich.
And then other names who are floating out there: North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. What say you about Richard Grinnell?
So I worked for Susan Rice at the UN after Rich Grinnell was head of communications there, and I could tell you to a person, the people in that embassy said he was the biggest asshole they'd ever worked with. Horrible guy, and a complete sycophant. And people can Google his work on intelligence during the Trump administration. This is a guy who should be nowhere near national security.
Yeah. Well, he is something, as they say, and bless his heart, as we say in the South. On that note, the Fed chair, Powell, said, I'm not stepping down. And Trump can't make me.
Yeah. We'll go to the clip.
Yeah.
Hi, Victoria Guido with Politico. Some of the president-elect's advisors have suggested that you should resign. If he asked you to leave, would you go?
No.
Can you follow up on, do you think that legally you're not required to leave?
No.
What else is there to say?
I love, and that's the exact kind of answer you should give. And I wish that Kamala Harris had done those kinds of answers as well. No.
Yeah. I mean, this is like, honestly, it's like it's just surreal that we're here. That's all I can say. It's like we're here again.
It is surreal that we're here, and it's surreal that this happened. Democratic, and I wonder why, because we've been going through this whole postmortem, right? Speaking of Richard Grinnell and dissent, let's just go back to this for a minute, because MSNBC broke down Project 2025's threat to the LGBTQ community, and I just wonder why people who are on my team, as they say, have any interest in being part of the MAGA and part of the administration. So let's look at that.
2025 calls for the wholesale abandonment of protections for the LGBTQIA+ community. It would eliminate protections for them. Rachel Maddow is going to read what Project 2025 explicitly says in black and white.
The Department of Health and Human Services should issue a general statement of policy specifying that it will not enforce any prohibition on sexual orientation and gender identity discrimination. Rescind regulations prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, transgender status, and sex characteristics. This starts with deleting the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Entrance criteria for military service and specific occupational career fields at the Defense Department should be based on the needs of those positions. Exceptions should be removed for individuals who are already predisposed to require medical treatment, for example, HIV positive or suffering from gender dysphoria. Those with gender dysphoria should be expelled from military service. Define sex under Title IX to mean only biological sex recognized at birth. Reverse policies that allow transgender individuals to serve in the military.
Project 2025 will devastate every inclusive community by making it no longer illegal to discriminate. It seeks to enforce heterosexuality as the only permissible human expression of gender and sexuality. It will eliminate all protections for any who differ from this traditional norm. It will abolish laws protecting LGBTQIA+ community members from discrimination. And it demands that the government stop enforcing current laws prohibiting such discrimination. That is Project 2025.
So what do you think of that? And why would any member of the LGBTQ community, there are two gay men up there who have possibly will take positions. Why on earth would they want to do that?
Well, I think, ambition is a drug. These people are addicted to their own ambitions. And Grinnell is certainly one of those people. Yeah. I don't think he has any loyalty to anybody but himself.
Yeah. Why do you think some of the Democratic Senate candidates outperform Kamala Harris in almost every single state. I wanted to talk to you about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but you know what? We know why. I think we've gone over that enough. I want to talk about the possible, since we did the breaking news on who could be in the cabinet, let's throw up some of the possible folks and tell me what you think about these folks, more about that, okay? So let's put that up again because I want you to be able to see it. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he could have a large portfolio in the administration as the health, food, and women's health sort of czar or whatever that is. What do you think of that?
Well, I think Democrats need some momentum. I think nothing will help Democrats reclaim a little bit of ground than a well-placed RFK Jr. role for women's health. Now, on the other hand, I think a lot of bad things will happen. And depending on what he's going to control, talking about getting rid of fluoride in the water or banning certain vaccines, and obviously, and he's floated a nationwide abortion ban. But it's just more like his process of thinking. He's a chaotic thinker.
Yeah.
Who has no understanding of science whatsoever, but has complete confidence in his understanding of science. That is a dangerous combination, and I think he's going to do crazy things. And the question is, I could equally see Trump just throwing him under the bus because Trump never has to run for office ever again. And this is a guy who has no loyalty whatsoever. And it's possible that Trump thinks RFK Jr. is as weird as you and I do, and would jettison him and basically put him in some useless job. And he'll never be seen again, or put him in charge of the environment, which Trump cares nothing about, right? So, you know what I'm saying?
Let me just say, I like fluoride. Thank you.
I agree. But do you know what I'm saying? Trump, I get the vibes from Trump that he thinks RFK Jr. is weird, and he put up with him because he was useful, but now he's not that useful anymore. So he's like, why even he'd either banish him or put him in charge of the environment. Trump doesn't care about the environment.
Yeah, but he mentioned him in his acceptance speech. He also mentioned, he did not mention Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller, as you know, has been a spokesperson for Donald Trump, and I think it's a sort of advisor to him as well, and also very strange ideas about lots of things.
Yeah, the mass deportations we haven't talked about yet, but I'm very curious about that and the tariffs and what Trump is going to do. Yeah. If he's smart, he just takes a little piece of each of those things so he can claim he did something, but doesn't move forward with the more robust versions of what he's talking about. But God help us if he does, if he moves forward.
Miller was the architect of some of Trump's first term immigration policies, including family separation, and in order to ban travel into the U.S. from several majority Muslim countries, the Muslim ban. Thank you very much, Stephen Miller. We talked about Susie Wiles. Senator Marco Rubio, who is sort of a traditional kind of Republican-ish kind of Republican. What do you think? Let's see, Rubio in the mix for Secretary of State.
Yeah, I mean, Rubio would be better than almost any conceivable alternative. I've got major issues with how spineless he is, but if it's a choice between Rubio and Grinnell, that to me is not even close.
Elon Musk, to become he's become one of his most vocal supporters this election season. Musk is the head of Tesla right now, and I think he wants to put him in charge of government spending or something like that.
Yeah.
Can he hold a job with a major company and still work for the government in that capacity?
My sense is he's just going to be a very influential advisor to Trump. He won't take any specific job. And a very dangerous advisor at that. I think we really need to watch out here.
Robbie, what are we up for? As will be our last question. What are we up for in the years to come when you see these folks who are up on the board and the Donald Trump presidency? Fasten your seatbelts, or do you think he's going to be a dictator on day one? Will the second term be as bad or worse than the first term?
It's impossible to predict what this guy is going to do, but one thing I could say for sure is that the last 2 years of Trump are going to be absolutely horrific. He will be older than Biden, and he has none of the moral guardrails that Biden has, and he's not going to be seeking re-election. And I think that's going to be a particularly nasty version of Trump. The best case scenario for us is that the first year or two is a little less bad. And that's what I'm hoping for, is a little less bad.
You know what I have to, I don't know if I agree with you that he's going to be, he can't serve anymore. I think, here's what I think he's going to try to do. He's going to try to pull a Michael Bloomberg. You know what Michael Bloomberg did here in New York? I think it's similar, not the exact same thing. He's going to say, I did not serve 2 consecutive terms. So therefore, if you split it up like that, I should be able to serve a 3rd term because consecutively, and that falls within the parameters of the Constitution. I think he's going to argue that. And with the Supreme Court, he might win. So we could be looking at 2 terms of Donald Trump.
Well, Don, thank you for giving me something else to worry about, man.
You think I'm wrong about that?
I have to look at it. You know, I have a law degree, but I haven't used it in a long time.
Even if they say it cannot, he's going to try to make the argument, make the case that he can do it. And he might win with the Supreme Court.
All right. Well,
you're like, all right, Don, I'm hanging up.
I'm gonna
Goodbye.
go drink heavily now. Thank you.
What are you going to have?
I don't know. I told you I was going to see Jim Mattis at some fundraiser for veterans tonight. And I'm sure it's like, you know, New York veteran community. It's going to be a lot of that kind of like never Trumper crowd. So we'll see what people have to say there.
There's always room for a good margarita. Where are you in the city?
I'm in Brooklyn. I was born in Brooklyn. I live in Brooklyn too. Yeah. So
which part? Just if you don't mind.
I'm in Boerum Hill.
Oh, I used to live in Cobble Hill.
Oh, sweet. Me too. I was on Warren and Smith for many years. Yeah.
Between Hicks and Henry. I love that neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very peaceful. I like it out here. I moved from Nolita, which was like crazy. As people.
I love Nolita though. It's wild now though. I don't live far from there, and it's a lot of people. It's weird. I live in this part of the village that's very quiet. And which is interesting because the West Village is just teeming with people, and Nolita teeming with people. But there's this little part of the village that's not a lot of people, and I'm so happy that I live in that part.
You have a great city councilman, Eric Botcher. Good.
I know Eric. I don't think I'm in Eric's district. I used to be. Okay. I was in Eric's district when I lived near CNN in Hudson Yards. And Eric, let me tell you, Eric got something done. He actually got something done for me. I know Eric.
Really?
He's a friend. Yeah, he's on vacation now, by the way. I think. Well, I think he may be. I don't know if it's vacation. I think he's in Puerto Rico. Maybe he's doing some work. But there was a light on top of a high rise next to my high rise, and it was way too bright. And it was one of those flashing red lights. And they said they needed it for the planes and the helicopter. I'm like, not this. It's like on a freaking runway. And within like a month or 2, Eric got it fixed.
Oh wow! Amazing.
He got things done. That usually never happens.
He's a hustler. I like that guy.
He is. Hey, thank you, Robbie. I appreciate it. Make sure you tune in just sometime and check out our stuff where we've been going around the country speaking to people on social media. It's really having an impact out there. So go check our social media site. All right.
Absolutely. Thanks, Don. I really
thank you, Robbie. I appreciate it. Love our conversation. Please come back. Ravi Gupta, everyone. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Who are watching us on TikTok. I didn't get a chance to speak to the TikTok folks that much. I used to have the TikTok camera like right here because I was so into this conversation. It was fascinating. I love like when I can have conversations and it just sort of free flowing and you can talk to people. Ravi Gupta was a very, very good guest. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you guys aren't too upset about, we have to do the postmortem sometimes. I know you guys don't like it. So here is what Christopher Solberry says. And Christopher, thank you. You're very generous with your support of independent media. Then why are you not talking about the left media that failed her? CNN failed. Other stations failed. You are picking about the lady, but not looking at the white society, black society, media, race in America is real. Until it's openly discussed, we failed. This is crazy. Christopher, I thank you for your support, but apparently you don't watch this program very much, and maybe you didn't watch from the beginning when I said I'm not talking about her specifically. I'm talking about the people around her and the way they led the campaign. I think that she ran a very good, and it was a valiant triumph. She did not ultimately succeed, but one must discuss, as we do on every single show. When I do this show, I'm going to hang up and I'll talk to the producers. How was it? How was the engagement? What do you think? And that is our postmortem. And people will say, you ran on too long on this sometimes. Sometimes they won't say anything. We always talk about what could have been better, what we did well, and that's just how things are done. The big part of this show is to be critics, culturally, politically, whatever. That's part of it. Did she run a perfect campaign? No. Did she run a good one? Yes. Are people going to pick over things? Yes. That's just how it's done. We've talked about race. We know that that was a factor, but you cannot say that it's just race and it is just sexism. What are the Democrats' role in it? What are her campaign managers' role in it? What's her role in it? Everyone could have done something better. I could have done better with this show. I could have done better with a lot of things, and I have to take responsibility and own that. That's all. I used to get criticized every single night and every single day from my team, from my managers or whatever. It's all part of it. Adults, big boys and girls can handle it. It's not just racism. That's a big factor. It's not just sexism, although that is a big factor as well. There are other things that went into the mix as to why she did not win, and we have to talk about those things as well. Otherwise, we're doing exactly what the criticism is about Democrats and what Democrats have gotten wrong by over-indexing on certain social issues. Yes, we know there's racism. We can talk about those things, but also people really do care about the economy. People really do care about the border and immigration. People really do care about healthcare. People really do care about women's reproductive rights. They care about a number of different issues. And it's not always just sexism or just racism. But those are big parts of society. I know, I'm a Black man. I talk about it all the time. If I don't talk about it, who will? So until it's openly discussed, we fail. We talk about it all the time. I agree with you. But on this particular program, that we have to talk about all the issues and not just two of them. Okay? Yes. If you have been watching us, the standards were different for her. We talk about it all the time. You got to tune in. So make that money that you just donated, that support of independent media, make sure that you watch this more often so that you understand what this show is about. It's about honesty. And even when you guys don't like to hear it, we got to tell you the truth. Someone else made a comment as we were on the air. I think, is it Christopher? Maybe it was Christopher. It was Christopher because I took a screenshot of it. Christopher upped his support. Don, Christopher says, she was Black. Why are we not addressing race in America? All other excuses are moot. This country has to get serious about race, man. I agree with you. Why are we not discussing race in America? Again, you haven't watched this program if you believe that we're not discussing it here. And maybe folks need to discuss it further in other places, but we discuss it a whole hell of a lot, and we're very serious and earnest about it, okay? Cindy Temple says identity politics is done. Cindy, I disagree with you that identity politics is done because MAGA is the biggest identity politics party, I think, ever in America. And MAGA won. Cindy Temple says identity politics is done. It's not done. MAGA is identity politics. And MAGA is now, we're a country of MAGA. I'm sorry, I know you guys hate to hear that, but we are. America didn't want a female president. True, Karen Bennett, they didn't. That's why they didn't vote her in. They didn't want her. And they have problem with women in high places or in leading positions. They have a problem with a woman leader. They do. It's not the only thing, but they did not want a woman president. They didn't want a Black woman president. Before we have a woman president, we had a Black man to be president. That says to you something about sexism in this country. It says something about how people feel about women's roles in this country, as it has to do with tradition and mostly stemming from religion. I think it's outdated, outmoded, backwards thinking. I think it's stupid. I think it's unwise. I think we're cutting off our noses to spite our face. I think we need a very strong woman. Perhaps a strong woman can clean up the mess that we have gotten ourselves into, meaning all of the other 40-some presidents or 30-some odd presidents, because some serve 2 terms, that came before. That's the truth. 100%. Don't forget to talk to Ravi about Israel, Gaza. Oh, I'm sorry, Reese. We didn't get to it. I should have. I wish I'd seen your comment. My bad. If you're not willing to go all out, says United We Stand, you lose. Yes, if you're not willing to go all out, you lose. Identity politics for Black Americans are becoming done. Sirius says, identity politics for Black Americans. I don't know if identity politics, I don't know what you mean by that. Because just because people discuss race and Black folks are a part of a coalition for the Democratic community does not mean that it's identity politics. All of it's identity politics. You vote for the person who you most identify with. So I don't understand what people are talking about identity politics. All politics is identity politics. Because don't you vote for the person that you identify with? That speaks to your values and concerns? That's most like you, whether it's on their opinions, their policies, their stances. So why should it be any different why should wanting a woman to be president be considered identity politics and somehow it's unusual from all the other things? Sometimes people say, hey, it's time for a woman leader. Okay. Some people say sometimes it's time for a leader who's going to have better taxes. Okay. Sometimes people say, hey, look, I want to see a Black man or a Black woman in office. Okay, all that's legit. That's what politics is about. Stop trying to make the rules different when you just don't, when the person may not be like you. Are you looking for an excuse or a permission structure to be racist or sexist or short-sighted or biased? If you think that wanting no regulations or you want cheaper taxes because you want more money in your pocket, how is that different than someone saying, hey, I want to see someone who looks like me be a leader? It's the same thing. That's what you want. That's what they want. And you can't call it identity politics because it happens to be not to be like a person that you identify with or a person of a different ethnicity or different gender. And so therefore you try to demonize it by saying it's identity politics. It's just identity politics in your mind if you don't identify with the person who the other person wants to be president or the leader. It's all a mind game. And that identity politics has been used as a pejorative for the Democratic Party or for people who vote for reasons of wanting to see a certain ethnicity in a position of power. Perhaps since there's only been one Black president of the United States, perhaps, and who did a really good job and was very qualified, if someone says, hey, I would like to see have another Black president, that person did a good job. It would be great if America could have another Black president, considering the history of our country and how many white presidents we've had over the time that we've been a country. Nothing wrong with that. And to say that people can't say that or have that feeling that that is wrong is because you're being a racist. Because it's your identity. Who you identify as a person you want to be the leader does not agree with who they identify with. You call it identity politics because you're trying to demonize them. It's bullshit. Would I like to see a woman as president? Yes. Do I identify with that? I absolutely do. Is that identity politics? No. That's not how I see it, but that's how you see it. You want to see someone with a red MAGA hat on, who's wearing a MAGA t-shirt, who wants to demonize immigrants. That's what you identify with. Is that not identity politics for you? We have common sense on this program. We are critical thinkers here. And I want you to be on this program and listen to it and be a critical thinker. It's okay for lots of things are okay. If you're a bigot and you want a bigot to be president, then just say it. If you are a woman, you want a woman to be president, just say it's okay. But just own it. If you're a Black person, you want a Black person to be president, okay, it's okay. Just say it. If you're a gay person, you want a gay person to be president, just say it. It's okay. But own your shit. Yes, I would like to see a Black president. I'm a Black man. We've had only one Black president. Would I like to see a Black woman president? Absolutely. I'm okay. I own it. Do I want to see a red MAGA hat wearing person being president? No, because I don't believe in the bigotry. I don't believe in the sexism. I don't believe in the homophobia. I don't believe in insurrectionists. I don't believe in election denying. I don't believe in overturning elections. I believe in abiding by the Constitution. I don't believe in performative patriotism. I don't believe that patriotism is just standing up and putting your hand over your heart to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Patriotism is about so much more than that. Patriotism is actually about knowing that people can criticize their country. And people, even if I don't like it, that if they want to burn the flag, that's their prerogative as Americans. I can feel a certain kind of way about it. but it's their right. Colin Kaepernick wanting to kneel for the national anthem is his right as an American to be able to do it. And if you're going to believe that Colin Kaepernick, if you're not going to allow Colin Kaepernick to kneel, then perhaps you should not be allowing Nick Bosa to wear a MAGA hat. Because Colin Kaepernick is not wearing a Barack Obama or a Kamala Harris or a Democrat t-shirt or hat on the field. But Nick Bosa is doing it, and you are commending him while you are demonizing Colin Kaepernick for being a true patriot. So don't get it twisted, and don't come with this stupid, dumb, backwards pretzel logic about what you think America is and what America should be. And just because you have a MAGA person in the White House does not mean when I say it's MAGA country, I'm saying that's who's leading our country. Those are the values of the people who voted for him. But that doesn't mean that everyone in our country believes in that bullshit and are going to stand behind that bullshit. That's what I'm saying. Okay. And I think that's a great way to leave you on this Friday night when I leave you to go make myself a tequila soda or a margarita, just being honest. Okay, so Lemonheads, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy 4 years, but we're ready for it. We're ready for it. So put on your armor. Just as we have the right to criticize our country, we have the right to criticize our political leaders, even the leaders we love, even the leaders we like, even the leaders we don't like, even the people we supported. I supported Kamala Harris, but I'm free to criticize her, and I'm supposed to. That's part of my job. And you can too. That's part of your right as an American. And in that criticism, perhaps people will do better. Maybe the party that supported her will do better as well. And maybe we'll all do it better as Americans if we understand those things. So make sure you hit the thumbs up. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe to our channel. And I will see you on Monday, if not before. So for those of you who are on the YouTube, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to go talk to my friends over on TikTok right now and get some of their questions in. Okay? So have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday, if not before. Today is today is Thursday, I know, but anyway, I'm taking the weekend early. So I'll see you on tomorrow, maybe. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure you hit the like button. It helps us with the algorithm. And also, we'd love for you to become a subscriber. So hit that button too. We're live every day at 10 a.m. Eastern Time and 5 p.m. Eastern, so there's plenty of content for you to check out. What's going on?